as ASEAN countries way back in 93, 94, 95, 96, those years. I was personally involved in these negotiations in Geneva, in Jakarta. ASEAN would often ask us, what is it that India would bring to the table? There was a kind of an asymmetry between the presence of ASEAN countries in the region as compared with that of India. You will be surprised to know that for years at that time, India was not even regarded as an Asian country. Asia ended in Thailand or in Myanmar. So it was an uphill task. And to answer the ASEAN, I think India made several commitments. And these commitments were largely to ensure that India will stand for the stability and security of the Asia-Pacific region in general and in ASEAN in particular. India signed the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation with ASEAN. India fully subscribed to the ideas of unity and centrality of ASEAN. India also offered to ASEAN its opening of the large Indian market and providing the Indian experience in democratic governance or HRD or capacity building, science and technology in multiple areas. I think that was the beginning of this dialogue partnership and the ARF. Additionally, the areas which were of mutual interest was, of course, maritime security, given the fact that more than half of ASEAN is archipelagic and maritime, and India has deep interests in that field. Economic integration, I think one of the key points of India-ASEAN interaction all these years. So this has really grown over the years. Now, when we talk of the Act East policy in contrast to or in evolution of the Look East policy, what is the difference? To my mind, the commitments which India made, to which India adhered to very religiously and scrupulously all these years, and they were also in mutual interest, have today been converted into India's national policy. I think India's foreign policy today is so closely interlinked, or in fact, Act East policy, I would say, is a main plank of India's foreign policy, in which India's domestic policies are also involved, given the fact that we are paying greater and greater interest and attention to the development of our Northeast, which is the bridge between ASEAN and India. The term Indo-Pacific, which has now gained currency, I think in a way also incorporates India's outlook, and that is one of ASEAN's outlook to this region. And in this context, I would say even ASEAN-India relationship or India's participation in the Quad, in which ASEAN countries are not there, but the participation or the even functioning of Quad is embedded in our partnership with ASEAN, or even the IORA, or the subsets, sub-regional arrangements like BIMSTEC, Ganga, Mekong, all these form part of that larger Indo-Pacific concept in which India and ASEAN have taken some kind of mutual commitments to side by each other. In that also, India's support to ASEAN for the following of the international laws in the South China Sea figures. So this is the broad common outlook in which India and ASEAN are going to work in the coming years. And finally, I would only say given the typical characteristics both of India as well as that of a number of ASEAN countries, I think our own governance, both in India as well as in these countries, with regard to handling our multiple identities, our diversities, our pluralism, I think that will be a factor of common interest to both as we start to developing closer and closer people-to-people contacts and greater interaction between our two societies. So these are some of the views I wanted to share on a very happy occasion when RIS, which as was stated earlier, I think is probably the first organization in India which started engaging with ASEAN and has consistently over the last 25 years supported India in ASEAN partnership. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ambassador Devre. Now, as we request you to launch the e-compendium, colleagues, there are almost 120 files in this e-compendium, and the size of those files is 1 gigabyte. So it's a huge collection of last 25 years that RIS has worked on India-ASEAN. So it's a moment of great pleasure and privilege for us to get all of that material together. Of course, some of the books which came out from professional publishers which have their own copyright that we could not include, only the titles are included. But most of the other papers which RIS churned out, they are all here. I would request the excellencies on the dais to launch it, and then I would request my colleague and head of the ASEAN India Center, Professor Prabir Dey, to make a brief presentation of what all it contains with his vote of thanks. But first, the launching of the pen drive. So Prabir, if you can just quickly tell us about the pen drive.
Well, if you look at the today's the whole day proceedings, we have 3 sessions. First session after this is about the transformation from lookist to actist. 1992 officially lookist policy was introduced. And then the post-launch, we have a session on economic relation, and the last one is that about kind of in the way ahead, the next 25 years, next 50 years, kind of that's what we will be debating. All the sessions have been actually drawn, and if you see the compendium which will be distributed to you very soon, actually RIS took the lead for heavy studies on ASEAN, not just ASEAN, also on EAS and many areas, as Ambassador Devre rightly mentioned, also Director Generals. So what I will do, quickly just just give you some reflections on our studies that what we have done. But before that, you need to quickly look at what's this year's, 25 years. If this illustration is clearly visible for you, maybe I can just go through that 1992 with the lookist policy we introduced, and then all the way 25 years in 2017-18. This time we will be culminating our celebration into a summit in 25th. So 25th of January we will have a 25-year celebrations, and then followed by the Republic Day celebrations the next day. So in between we have several things. FTA signed, special fund introduced, services trade and investment agreement signed, fund like, 77 million dollar for CLMB, etc., etc. All these are one by one actually came out from several of the studies that the RIS, initiated. So what if I quickly look at what we have done in this USB drive that you will be getting. We have the first study that we have done in 1993. That's what the study by Mr. V.L. Rao, Professor V.L. Rao and Ram Upendra Das is occasional paper on India ASEAN. There is a formal study in 1993. And 1992, India joined as a sectoral partner. And 1992 also the look-east policies came in place. And then the first book, I'm surprised, the 1992 I passed out my master's from the Calcutta University, but I found this towards an Asian economic area. It was edited by our founding Director General, Professor V.R. Panchmukhi, and Rehman Soban, who is the chairperson of Center for Policy Dialogue in Dhaka. And it was came out by Macmillan that time. And so many interesting papers, not just trade and investment, also in development aspects. So this was beginning and by the founder, Director General of RIS. So if that's the, we started with such, and then if you look at the number of studies, we did 72. Post FTA, we signed framework agreement 2004, implemented on 1st January 2010. So if you split this FTA, because RIS contributed many studies, consultations, support to the ministry on the FTA process. 72 is total in number, and it reached a peak when if you see the year-wise, the breakup, the publications, this doesn't count our official inputs to the ministry, because ministry asks so many inputs from us, and many of our chairs are here, and I know that we have been dealing with them. But when the Director General Nagesh Kumar, who was the Director General, that time it reached a peak, like we haven't yet crossed that, which is in 2004 and 5, we had a publication 9 in each year. So this is the trend. We started with 1993 and 2018. And if we split the types of publications, we have an occasional paper, 3, discussion paper 39, which is a major chunk of our ASEAN-related works, which is 55%. Book like this, we have 11 in number, and several reports, 19 reports. Most of the reports actually went to feed the government policy makings. Air connectivity, maritime connectivity, FTA, and also generating more studies, more initiatives at track 1 level like MGC, Mekong Ganga Cooperation, and recent one is India, Myanmar, trilateral IMT, TC. Subjects cover, if we look at basically these 72 studies are regional integration, but we looked at the FTA, trade barriers, some studies on the NTMs, several bilaterals like Vietnam, Laupedia. It has several studies on FDI, investments, connectivity. We have dealt with the sectoral issues like science and technology, innovations, agriculture, biotechnology, ICT, energy, governance issues. Also, it lead to generate sub-regional cooperation we looked at sub-regional cooperation like CLMB, MGC, and the cultural and historical links, which is added much later when Ambassador Sam Sharan was here, the chairman, and we have done several studies on cultural and civilizational links. That way, 3 Cs, that is a very popular term, the commerce, culture, and connectivity, we have extensively covered in the studies. Last slide, what sort of policy makings that we have done. After all, RIS is a policy research institute with an academic support. Now, directly we know that, I am not going to tell the exact what policy is introduced, but we found that 6 broad areas is policy making coming from RIS. One is trade and investments, FTA and post-FTA evaluations, dealing with trade barriers, connectivity, development cooperations, culture and civilization links, and then ASEAN India Center, because RIS activities in 1992 has actually led the government to set up the center at RIS. So these are the 6 major development we found through our activities, which fed the government and also to RIS itself. So thank you very much and listening to us. So we'll be moving towards next whole day Looking forward to your participations and comments and deliberations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prabir. Thanks a lot. Now we come to an end of our inaugural session. Would have a tea break, and then we would come back. We are almost on dot on time, actually. It's 10:30, and it's time for a tea coffee break, and of course for networking. I also particularly want to thank excellencies from different missions here in Delhi who today have joined us. I am thankful to Ambassador Indonesia for joining. So thanks a lot, sir. Now we break for tea and coffee and would come back at 11. Thank you.